The sun had barely broken the Manhattan skyline when Tristan Hale stepped out of his Mercedes, the smell of expensive perfume still clinging to his clothes. He moved through the quiet lobby of the Upper East Side penthouse the way a man does when he believes nothing in his life can truly crumble, not his marriage, not his empire, not even the woman he had spent the night with. To him, the world was predictable, controllable, bendable, but not today. When he pushed open the front door, expecting the soft echo of Madeline's footsteps, the apartment met him with a silence so sharp it felt deliberate. No coffee brewing, no shoes by the door, no half-finished sketches on the dining table, just stillness, heavy and unnatural. He called her name once, then again, louder, nothing. A flicker of unease tightened his jaw. On the marble kitchen counter lay a single envelope, cream-colored, perfectly centered, as if placed with surgical precision. His name was written in Madeline's handwriting, but the strokes were colder, more rigid than he remembered. He hesitated only a second before tearing it open. Inside was one line, nothing more. By the time you read this, I will no longer be the woman you think you own. Tristan Froza. Madeline wasn't dramatic. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't the type to walk out without tears, apologies, or explanations. He had spent years shaping her into someone who wouldn't. Yet the chilling emptiness of the penthouse said otherwise. He rushed toward the bedroom closet, doors wide open, drawers cleared, jewelry gone. But the real punch came when he noticed the safe in his office. The door hung open, empty. That's impossible, he whispered, because the only thing stored inside that safe was the one secret that could destroy him. And Madeline now had it, and she wasn't coming back. Madeline Maddie Carter had always been the kind of woman people overlooked at first glance. Soft-spoken, warm-eyed, gentle in her movements. She built a life on subtlety, on patience, on the quiet belief that love, when nurtured, could soften even the hardest edges. Before meeting Tristan Hale, she had been one of New York's most promising interior architects, winning design awards before turning 30. Her sketches once hung in boutique galleries in Soho. Her name whispered among luxury developers who admired her instinct for turning cold spaces into living poetry. But marriage changed everything, not in the way she'd hoped. Tristan, with his polished smile and ruthless ambition, convinced her that stepping back from her career was an act of trust. He promised she would never have to work again. He promised stability, comfort, a life without struggle. She believed him because back then, she still believed in men who spoke with conviction. She didn't see the trap until it snapped shut. He slowly took everything, her projects, her clients, her confidence. He persuaded her to transfer property rights for tax reasons. He made decisions without asking, dismissed her ideas as cute, and conditioned her to apologize for problems she didn't create. Piece by piece, the vibrant woman, once praised by Manhattan's design world, faded into the quiet shadow living in his penthouse. And yet, she stayed. Because at 33, carrying the child she had been told she might never have, Madeline was fighting a silent war with herself. Every kick she felt inside her made leaving harder. Every ultrasound photo reminded her of the dream she'd once had for her family. She wanted the child to have a peaceful home. She wanted to believe Tristan could change. But the night she saw the hotel receipt and the lipstick stain on his shirt, something inside her broke in a way it would never repair. The betrayal wasn't just infidelity. It was confirmation that she had traded her whole world for a man who never planned to protect it. All night she sat alone in the dim light of the penthouse office, one hand on her belly, the other holding the proof of Tristan's affair. Her tears weren't loud. They were quiet, controlled, the kind a woman sheds when she realizes she has no more tears left to give. And in that silence, she chose strength. She chose herself. She packed her belongings with steady hands, opened the one safe Tristan believed she didn't know the combination to, and reclaimed the only leverage powerful enough to bring him to his knees. And as she closed the penthouse door for the last time, she whispered to her child, "We deserve better than this." And Mistress. The penthouse on East 72nd Street was the kind of place magazines begged to photograph 40 floors above Manhattan, with glass walls that caught every sunrise like a crystal chalice overflowing with gold. It had been Tristan's pride, a symbol of status he wore as loudly as his tailored suits. To the outside world, The Hale residence represented wealth, stability, and a marriage sculpted to perfection. To Madeline, however, it had slowly become a museum of everything she had lost. Every corner of the home carried her touch. The warm walnut panels she chose to soften the sharp lines of the architecture, the custom velvet sofa she designed herself, the hand-picked art pieces meant to make the space feel lived in rather than displayed. Ironically, the home Tristan bragged about at fundraisers and corporate dinners existed because of her vision. But he never credited her. He credited the designer he hired, never clarifying that the designer had been his own wife. She used to love mornings here. She would stand barefoot on the cool marble floors, watching the sun rise over the East River while sipping her Starbucks latte, imagining a future where her family filled these rooms with laughter. But as the months passed, those mornings darkened. The penthouse stopped feeling like a home and morphed into a glass cage, beautiful, spacious, and suffocating. The illusion of perfection shattered the night she found the reservation slip. The Ritz-Carlton, Suite 2409, 2 guests, 1 king bed. The date matched the night Tristan claimed he was working late. After that, every item in the penthouse felt tainted. The Tiffany bracelet he bought her suddenly felt like a guilt offering. The Montblanc pen he used to sign million-dollar contracts reminded her of the lies he drafted just as effortlessly. Even the Mercedes in the private garage, once a birthday gift, felt like a tool of control, not affection. When she returned to the penthouse after gathering her courage, she no longer saw the Manhattan skyline through the windows. She saw the reflection of a woman who had been asked to shrink herself inside a life that was too big for the version of her Tristan preferred. But the world outside Park Avenue towers, Fifth Avenue boutiques, gala halls at the plaza once felt intimidating. Now, strangely, it felt possible. Open. Wide enough for a new beginning. Because Manhattan wasn't just Tristan's playground. It was a city where the underestimated could rise. And Madeline was finally ready to reclaim it. But as she stepped into that elevator to leave, she didn't know yet someone else had already noticed her disappearance, and he was moving toward her life again. Tristan Hale built his empire the same way he built his reputation, fast, aggressively, and without ever looking back at the people he stepped on. In Manhattan's business circles, he was known as the polished predator, a man who could charm a boardroom and gut a partnership in the same breath. He wore power like a tailored Tom Ford suit, effortlessly, confidently, arrogantly. And for years, he believed that no one, not investors, not the press, and certainly not his soft-spoken wife, could ever threaten the kingdom he'd built. But every king has a weakness. Tristan's was indulgence. Her name was Sienna Moore. She was everything Madeline wasn't: flashy, ambitious, hungry for fame, and proximity to wealth. Tristan had met her during a charity gala at the plaza, where she floated through the ballroom in a crimson gown that demanded attention. And Tristan, predictable in his vanities, gave it willingly. To him, Sienna wasn't love, she was escape. A shiny distraction from the life he had grown bored of, a toy he could flaunt, a secret he believed he could control. But Sienna was never playing the same game. She knew Tristan was powerful, but she also knew he was reckless. She watched the way he dismissed warnings from his CFO, how he ignored quiet shifts in the market, how he trusted the wrong advisors simply because they stroked his ego. She knew men like him, they rose fast, but they fell faster when the right woman nudged the first domino. And that's precisely what she intended to do. The night before Madeline vanished, Sienna had pressed her lips to Tristan's ear at the Ritz-Carlton and whispered, "You could have so much more if she were gone." She meant influence. She meant access. She meant his shares. Tristan, half drunk on lust and self-importance, laughed it off. "You don't understand," he said smugly. "Maddie won't leave. She needs me." It was the lie he'd told himself for years. What he didn't know was that Sienna had already set plans in motion, subtle leaks to the media, carefully timed whispers to investors, a slow erosion of confidence around his leadership. She wasn't trying to destroy Tristan. She was trying to own him. And she believed she could right up until she learned Madeline was gone. The penthouse was empty, and the safe had been cleared. Sienna's red-painted smile faltered for the first time, because the one woman she thought was powerless had just become the most dangerous person in Tristan Hale's life. And Sienna had no idea what Madeline had taken with her. The scandal broke before Tristan even realized anything was wrong. At 9:12 a.m., while he sat in his Park Avenue office sipping his double-shot espresso, his phone buzzed with a notification. Manhattan Daily Insider. Hale CEO spotted at Ritz-Carlton with mystery woman. At first, he smirked. Media speculation wasn't new to him. Attention, even the wrong kind, fed his ego. But when he opened the article, the blood drained from his face. There, in crisp high resolution, was a photo of him and Sienna stepping out of the hotel elevator. Her lipstick smudged, his tie loosened, their hands unmistakably intertwined. The timing was a dagger because it was published exactly an hour after he found Madeline gone. For the first time in years, Tristan felt cornered. As more notifications poured in business blogs, social media threads, investor message boards, his confidence cracked. The comments weren't kind. Stockholders demanded explanations. PR teams scrambled to contain the narrative. His CFO sent him a terse message. "We need to talk. Urgent." Still, Tristan wasn't prepared for what came next. At 11:45 a.m., he stepped into a board meeting to find every pair of eyes fixed on him. Not with admiration, not even with disappointment, but with suspicion. At the center of the table sat a printed report someone had clearly distributed to every board member. A list of his unauthorized expenses, hotel charges, gifts for Sienna, transfers he thought no one could trace. He glared around the room. Who leaked this? Silence. But the silence wasn't neutral, it was condemning. Tristan's voice hardened. This is being blown out of proportion. One board member leaned back, steepling his fingers. Is it because your wife is missing? Investors are asking if this is a domestic scandal waiting to explode. They're questioning your judgment. Another added, your personal behavior is now hurting the company, Tristan. That makes it our problem. He tried to defend himself, but every excuse he uttered only darkened the faces around him. Sienna, sensing danger, didn't answer his calls. And the employees who once chased his approval now avoided his gaze. By noon, the whispers had become a storm. His empire, his carefully curated image, was cracking at the seams. But the worst part wasn't the headlines. It wasn't the leaked expenses. It wasn't even the board's growing distrust. It was a short message from an unknown number, delivered right as he walked out of the meeting. This is only the beginning. Tristan's hands trembled. Because Madeline wasn't just gone. Asterisk, asterisk, she was fighting back. And she had chosen the perfect moment to strike. Madeline Carter didn't cry when she left the penthouse. She didn't cry when she closed the elevator door, or when the taxi pulled away from the curb, or even when the Manhattan skyline blurred behind the fogged window. But she broke the moment she stepped into the quiet, dimly lit waiting room of Dr. Rowan Blake's private clinic. Her body, which had carried every betrayal in silence, finally surrendered. She sank into one of the leather chairs, hands trembling uncontrollably. The weight of the past months, Tristan's lies, the nights he didn't come home, the subtle cruelty disguised as concern, crashed down all at once. And now, with the whole city whispering about the scandal, the humiliation was no longer private. It was everywhere, suffocating her. When Rowan walked in and saw her, he paused mid-step. "Maddie?" His voice softened in a way she hadn't heard in years. "What happened?" She opened her mouth, but no words formed. Her throat tightened, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. Rowan rushed to her side as she swayed, guiding her gently into a reclining chair. "Deep breaths," he instructed. "You're overwhelmed. Your body's telling you to stop." But stopping wasn't something Madeline had been allowed to do, not in her marriage, not in her life. She had pushed through exhaustion, through loneliness, through fear. She had pretended for so long that she had forgotten how to feel anything other than controlled. Now, the facade shattered. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. Not the dramatic, heaving kind. These were soft, exhausted tears, the kind shed by a woman who had held everything together long after her strength ran out. "I wasn't enough," she whispered, staring at the floor. "No matter what I did, I was never enough." Rowan knelt beside her, his expression tightening not with pity, but with something sharper. "Maddie," he said firmly, "that man didn't break you because you weren't enough. He broke you because he feared what you could be without him." She shook her head, but his words hit a place she didn't want to acknowledge, a place where she still felt small, trapped in the shadow of Tristan Hale's arrogance. Her chest tightened again, breath hitching. Rowan placed a reassuring hand near her shoulder, not touching, but close enough to anchor her. "You're safe," he murmured. "This moment won't define you." End quote. But even as he said it, Maddie knew something terrifying. This breakdown wasn't just emotional. It was the beginning of a transformation she wasn't ready for. And Tristan had no idea she was done playing his quiet, obedient wife. But the world would find out soon enough. Madeline didn't return to Rowan's clinic the next day. She didn't go back to the penthouse. She didn't call Tristan. Instead, she found herself in a tiny, sunlit Airbnb on the Lower East Side, a stark contrast to the polished marble world she'd just escaped. Exposed brick walls, creaky wooden floors, a faint smell of old books and lavender. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. For the first time in years, she could breathe without asking permission. She set her backpack down, her fingers brushing against the one object Tristan had never expected her to touch. The encrypted folder she'd taken from his safe. He believed she didn't know the combination, but she had memorized it months ago, back when he still pretended to love her. Now, she opened her laptop, entered the password, and waited. Rows of documents appeared: contracts, side deals, offshore transfers, confidential communications. Her breath caught as she scrolled deeper. Tristan Hale wasn't just cheating on her. He was breaking the law. Millions in unreported assets. Illegal land acquisitions. Payoffs disguised as consulting fees. It's Mistress. P. Tekendall, and buried inside one folder, a recorded phone call with his CFO discussing how to delete evidence before an upcoming audit. Madeline's pulse accelerated, not with fear this time, but with a calm, unfamiliar sense of power. This wasn't leverage. This was a weapon. And she hadn't even reached the biggest surprise yet. A second file, labeled with her initials M.C., made her stomach tighten. She clicked it open hesitantly. Medical records, insurance claims, doctor's notes. But they weren't hers. They were Tristan's. And the diagnosis written at the top of the page, her heart nearly stopped. He had a serious cardiac condition, genetic, progressive, high risk, under stress. And he had hidden it from the board, from investors, from everyone. She stared at the screen, stunned. This was the secret he feared more than exposés, more than scandals, more than losing her. Because if the board discovered this, Tristan wouldn't just lose his reputation, he'd lose his company. For a moment, Madeline felt a pang of sadness. This was still the man she had married, the man she once believed she'd grow old with, the father of her unborn child. But then she remembered the hotel slip, the lies, the humiliation, the years of erasing her voice, her work, her worth. Her sadness hardened into resolve. She didn't know what her next step would be yet. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Tristan Hale had built an empire on secrets, and Madeline Carter now held every one of them. The first domino had already fallen, and nothing would stop the chain reaction now. Morning sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds of the Airbnb, painting soft gold across the wooden floor. Madeline hadn't slept much, not because of fear, but because her mind was finally awake in a way it hadn't been for years. The documents she uncovered last night lingered in her thoughts like thunder before a storm. Tristan's empire wasn't just fragile, it was already cracking. And for the first time, Madeline realized she was not powerless. She was positioned at the center of its collapse. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, breathing slowly as her heartbeat steadied. The old version of herself, the one who apologized too quickly, who swallowed her opinions, who tried to be small so Tristan could feel big, was slipping away. In her place stood a woman rediscovering her own voice. But rising wasn't easy. Her phone buzzed with messages she hadn't dared open. Tristan had called 12 times, 3 voicemails, 2 text messages from unknown numbers likely tied to his PR team. And then there were the headlines. Hale marriage on the rocks? Sources say CEO's wife missing amid scandal. Insiders fear corporate fallout. She should have felt panic. Instead, she felt clarity. If the world thought she was missing, then so be it. Silence was a weapon too. She reached for her sketchbook, something she hadn't touched in months, and let her pencil move. Not delicate flowers or abstract lines like before. Today, she drew structure. Strength, iron beams rising from the ground, supporting a building no storm could tear down. A knock at the door startled her. Rowan stood outside, holding a paper bag of pastries and a warm drink. His expression softened when he saw her sketchbook open. "Maddie," he said gently, "you're creating again." End quote. She exhaled shakily. "I'm trying." "You're doing more than trying," he replied. "You're rebuilding." For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the warmth of his presence. Not romantic, not complicated, just steady. Someone who saw her without trying to reshape her. He sat beside her, voice lowering. "Tristan is unraveling. Investors are calling. He's panicking." Madeline closed the sketchbook. "Good." Rowan studied her face, almost surprised by the steel in her tone. "Are you ready for what comes next?" She nodded. Not timid, not hesitant. "Certain." "I've played his version of the game for years," she said quietly. "Now he's going to play mine." Rowan didn't smile. He didn't need to. The shift in her was unmistakable. Madeline Carter wasn't running anymore. She was preparing. And Tristan Hale was about to learn what happens when the woman he underestimated decides to rise. Madeline hadn't planned to strike first. She thought she would bide her time, carefully assemble every document, every email, every whisper of misconduct before making a move. But as she scrolled through the files she'd taken from Tristan's safe proof of his financial manipulation, his offshore accounts, his ownership of properties under false names, one realization became clear. He had been preparing to replace her long before she ever suspected. Among the emails sat a draft agreement for a marital transition plan, dated months earlier. His lawyer had written a section outlining how to limit spousal claims and prepare the public for the shift to a more image-appropriate partner. Sienna. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. Madeline felt something cold settle inside her, the kind of cold that didn't freeze you. It sharpened you. Rowan found her standing by the Airbnb window, laptop open, Manhattan glittering behind her like 1,000 tiny judgments. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied, "but I finally see everything clearly." She clicked a file labeled Project Athena, a development Tristan had bragged about for months. But now, the truth stared back at her. He hadn't designed the project. She had. Her sketches, her models, her floor plans, every detail, stolen and registered under a different architect's name. Rowan skimmed through the documents, jaw tightening. "He's been using your work for years." "And claiming credit?" she added softly. "Of course he has." She looked at Rowan, a new steadiness in her eyes. "I want him exposed, but not recklessly. I want precision." Rowan nodded slowly. "Then start small. One controlled leak, enough to destabilize him, not enough for him to trace it back to you. And 7T90. Madeline swallowed. "Like what?" Rowan pointed at a specific file, an email thread showing Tristan instructing a contractor to bypass safety inspections on a major building to save money. "That," Rowan said, "is enough to terrify the board without involving you." Madeline hesitated only briefly before hitting send. The leak went to an anonymous industry watchdog. By noon, architecture forums were buzzing. By evening, 3 journalists reached out for comment. By the next morning, the board had called an emergency meeting. Tristan's empire shook, and Madeline watched quietly, her hand resting on her stomach, as her first strike rippled through Manhattan. She didn't enjoy it, but she didn't regret it either. This wasn't revenge, it was accountability. And she wasn't finished, not even close. Madeline didn't expect Rowan to come back. After helping her send the first controlled leak, she assumed he would return to his quiet, structured world of hospital corridors, research conferences, and flawless reputation. He had nothing to gain by staying involved. In fact, aligning himself with her could cost him everything: his advisory contract with Hale Corporation, his standing among Manhattan's elite, even the trust of his board. But the next morning, he showed up at her Airbnb door with 2 coffees and a look that wasn't gentle anymore, it was decisive. "We need to talk," he said. She blinked. "About what?" "About Tristan. And about what he's capable of." He stepped inside, closed the door, and laid a folded file on the table. Madeline recognized the Hale Corporation seal immediately. "Rowan, how did you?" He held up a hand. "You're not the only one who's been keeping quiet." He opened the file and revealed internal memos, medical reports, and confidential emails. Tristan had not only hidden his heart condition, he had falsified documents to keep his board from discovering it. He'd been manipulating quarterly reports to conceal sudden absences and unexplained hospital stays. If uncovered, it wouldn't just damage him, it would destroy him. Madeline stared at Rowan, stunned. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to know the truth," Rowan replied. "And because Tristan has been using my medical credibility to cover his tracks." She frowned. "So, he dragged you into this?" Rowan nodded, jaw tight. "He forged my signature on one of the clearance documents. If this comes out the wrong way, my career is at risk." That's when it truly hit her. Rowan wasn't helping her from pity. He wasn't here solely out of loyalty or old friendship. He was here because Tristan had crossed him too. For the first time, Madeline realized Tristan's web of manipulation was larger, dirtier, and more dangerous than she had imagined. She wasn't just fighting for her marriage or her dignity. She was fighting a man whose ambition had rotted into something reckless. Rowan met her eyes. "We take him down smartly, not emotionally, strategically. You deserve freedom, Maddie, and I deserve the truth to come out." Whenever 7, her throat tightened, not from weakness, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Support. Real, unselfish support. She nodded slowly. "Then we do this together." A spark flickered in Rowan's expression. Not romantic, not yet, but protective, steady, unshakable. Tristan Hale had always believed he controlled the board, the narrative, the world. But now, two people he underestimated were aligning. And that alliance was about to become his greatest undoing. Sienna Moore had always known how to read a room. It was her greatest talent long before she learned how to weaponize beauty or charm ambition. She could sense power shifts before anyone else, and she felt it now as she walked through the lobby of Hale Urban's headquarters. Executives avoided her gaze. Assistants who once whispered compliments now whispered concerns. Even the security guards looked uneasy when she passed. The controlled leak Madeline had sent had hit harder than expected, and Sienna was furious. She stepped into Tristan's private office without knocking. He sat hunched over his desk, shirt rumpled, tie abandoned, the glow of financial news screens casting harsh light across his face. For the first time since she'd met him, Tristan Hale looked afraid. "Why didn't you warn me this was coming?" she demanded. Tristan glared at her. "Warn you? I didn't know. Someone inside the company is leaking information, and the board wants answers. It's of Jess's experiences." She folded her arms, leaning against the glass desk. "Then give them answers." "I can't." His voice cracked, something Sienna had never heard. "If they dig too deep, everything collapses." Sienna stilled. Everything? Slowly, she realized the truth. The man she planned to manipulate was standing on quicksand. And if he went down, he could drag her with him. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "What exactly have you been hiding, Tristan?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The tightness around his eyes, the way he avoided her gaze, it told her enough. Sienna wasn't dealing with a powerful billionaire anymore. She was dealing with a desperate man. Her mind shifted instantly from lover to strategist. She placed a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me. If this gets worse, the board will replace you. Unless..." He looked up sharply. "Unless what?" "Unless you protect yourself, move assets, prepare a contingency plan, transfer shares preferably to someone they can't touch easily." Tristan shook his head. "I can't trust anyone with that." Her smile was slow, calculated. "You can trust me." He didn't answer. And that hesitation, the tiny pause, infuriated her. She straightened, her tone turning icy. "Your wife is gone. Your investors are panicking. And you're hesitating, with the only person still on your side?" It wasn't true. Sienna wasn't on his side. She was on whichever side won. But Tristan was too shaken to see that. He pressed his palms to his temples. "I need time. Just time." Sienna's eyes narrowed. Time was exactly what she didn't have. As she stormed out of his office, she pulled out her phone and typed a message to an unknown contact. "The plan is shifting. He's cracking faster than expected. Be ready." Because Sienna Moore wasn't done. Not with Tristan. Not with Madeline. Not with the empire she intended to claim for herself. Asterisk, asterisk, and she had just decided if she couldn't control Tristan Hale, she would help destroy him instead. The Hale Urban Annual Investors Conference at the Plaza Hotel was supposed to be Tristan's moment of triumph. He had spent weeks preparing for it, perfect lighting, flawless presentation screens, a curated guest list of New York's most influential figures. Investors, developers, international partners, everyone who mattered was there. Except Madeline. And that was his first warning. He stood backstage, adjusting his suit jacket, trying to ignore the tremors of anxiety beneath his ribs. The public leak had already shaken investor confidence, and his PR team begged him to control the narrative. Tristan planned to do exactly that, step on stage, smile, pretend nothing was wrong. But the universe had finally run out of patience with him. As he walked onto the stage, applause rose polite, thin, uncertain. The moment his face appeared on the massive LED screen, he forced a confident smile. Cameras flashed. Phones lifted. The entire ballroom held its breath. "Thank you for joining us," he began, voice steady despite the tightness in his chest. "Today marks..." The screen behind him flickered. Once, twice. Then the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. And suddenly, the image on the screen changed. Not to his presentation. Not to architectural renderings. Not to company achievements. But to a video, a hotel hallway, a familiar carpet pattern. Sienna Moore stepping out of the elevator. Tristan appearing seconds later, tie undone, shirt wrinkled, kissing her like the world had already ended. Gasps erupted through the ballroom. Someone dropped a glass. Another person whispered, "Oh my God." Cameras immediately rose, this time not in admiration, but in hunger. Tristan spun toward the screen, face draining of all color. That's not authorized," he shouted. But the video continued. Every intimate gesture, every damning second, projected across a ballroom full of investors. And then, the worst part, a timestamp. The night before Madeline disappeared. The implications spread like wildfire. Rowan, standing discreetly at the back, watched with a clenched jaw, not celebrating, not gloating, but recognizing exactly what this moment was. The beginning of Tristan Hale's public unraveling. His COO stormed onto the stage. "Cut the feed, now!" Damsova, my. Technicians scrambled. The screen went dark. But the damage was irreversible. Whispers turned venomous. Investors stood up in outrage. Phones buzzed with frantic calls to lawyers. Tristan stumbled back from the podium, breathing hard. Who did this? But no one answered. Outside on Fifth Avenue, where horns blared and taxis screamed, the news was already spreading. The scandal wasn't a rumor anymore. It was global. And Madeline Carter, quiet, underestimated. Madeline hadn't even played her strongest card yet. Asterisk, asterisk. This was only the public warning shot. The real reckoning was still on its way. Madeline had watched the chaos at the plaza unfold from Rowan's clinic, a safe distance from the public eye. She didn't need to see the entire video. The frantic text messages, the headlines exploding across every major news outlet, and the stunned silence in Rowan's expression told her everything she needed to know. Tristan was falling. Fast. Hard. Spectacularly. But victory didn't feel like victory. Not yet. Hours later, when the adrenaline faded, a sharp ache clawed up her abdomen, a deep, twisting pressure that stole her breath. She pressed a hand against her belly, inhaling sharply. No, not now. The room spun, her vision blurred. Panic surged through her chest like a rising tide. She wasn't scared of Tristan. She wasn't scared of the scandal. She wasn't scared of what the world thought. She was scared for her baby. "Maddie?" Rowan's voice cut through the haze, rushed and urgent. He guided her into the exam room as she struggled to steady her breathing. "Talk to me. What are you feeling?" "Cramping," she whispered, her voice trembling. It's stronger than before." He didn't waste a second. Machines beeped to life. His hands moved with years of expertise, but his eyes, those betrayed the worry he tried to hide. "Your stress levels are too high," he murmured, scanning the readings. "Your body is reacting to everything you've been holding in." A tear slid down her cheek, not from pain, but from frustration. She hated that Tristan still had this much power over her, even indirectly. She hated that her own body was being pulled into the war she tried so hard to fight, with strategy, not emotion. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered. Rowan shook his head immediately. "No, this is not your fault. You've been carrying too much for too long." His voice softened. "You're not weak, Maddie. You're exhausted." She closed her eyes. For For a fleeting moment, she let herself lean into the truth. She wasn't indestructible. She wasn't immune to fear. She wasn't the cold strategist she tried to become overnight. She was human, a pregnant woman under impossible pressure. Rowan placed a reassuring hand near her arm, not touching, just grounding. The baby's okay for now, but you need rest, calm, and distance from anything that spikes your stress. Distance. The word lingered. Distance from Tristan, from the scandal, from the war she had started. But destiny wasn't waiting. As Rowan adjusted the monitors, her phone buzzed on the counter. A single notification. A single name. Tristan Hale was calling her. And the moment she answered, nothing in her careful, strategic plan would remain the same. Asterisk, because weakness wasn't her downfall. It was the turning point she never saw coming. Madeline stared at Tristan's name glowing across her phone screen, her pulse skittering with a mix of dread and something far more complicated closure that hadn't yet happened. Rowan moved closer, concern shadowing his features. "You don't have to answer," he said gently. But she did. Not for Tristan. For herself, she pressed accept. At first, there was nothing, just ragged breathing on the other end, the kind that came from a man whose world had tilted so violently he hadn't found the ground yet. "Maddie?" Tristan's voice cracked, unpolished, unconfident, nothing like the man who once strutted through boardrooms believing gravity bent for him. I need to see you, please." Her fingers tightened around the phone. "Why?" "Everything is falling apart," he choked. "They're turning on me. Investors, the board, even Sienna, she's avoiding me. I can't fix this alone." Madeline closed her eyes. She felt the ache in her abdomen again, softer now but still present, a reminder of the stakes that had nothing to do with revenge. "You always believed you didn't need anyone," she said quietly. "Not me, not your team, not the truth. And now you're calling me because you finally do? That's not Maddie. I made mistakes, big ones. But I swear, I never meant for things to go this far." She almost laughed. "You never meant to be caught. There's a difference." Silence. Heavy, humiliating. Then Tristan whispered, raw and desperate, "Come home. Just for tonight, we can talk. We can figure this out." Her throat tightened, but not for him. For the woman she used to be. The woman who would have run back instantly. The woman who believed love meant endurance, even when it hurt. "I don't have a home with you anymore," she said softly. On the other end, Tristan inhaled sharply, as if her words had struck a place deeper than betrayal, his pride. "Maddie, please, I'm losing everything." "No," she corrected. "You're losing the things you built with lies." Another pause, then a fractured whisper. "I miss you." She didn't respond. Not with anger, not with softness, just truth. "You don't miss me," she said. "You miss the version of me who stayed silent." A long, excruciating beat, then she ended the call. Her hand trembled, but her heart didn't. Rowan stepped beside her, voice low. That wasn't weakness, that was strength. Madeline exhaled slowly, placing a protective hand on her stomach. Strength, but also danger. Because Tristan Hale, for the first time in his life, was truly afraid. Asterisk. And frightened men become unpredictable enemies, especially when they realize the person they underestimated is no longer theirs to control. For hours after ending Tristan's call, Madeline couldn't steady her hands. Not from fear, she was long past being afraid of him, but from a surge of clarity so sharp it almost hurt. His desperation wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Tristan Hale needed her silence to survive, which meant her voice had power, and she was finally ready to use it. Rowan placed a folder in front of her on the small Airbnb kitchen table. "This is everything we need to file a formal request for an independent audit," he said. "His falsified medical clearance alone is enough to trigger it, but combined with the contractor emails you leaked, it will force the board's hand," Madeline finished. Rowan nodded. "They'll have to suspend him pending investigation." Madeline exhaled slowly. The idea that she, once the quiet wife hidden behind Tristan's success, could bring down a corporation felt surreal. But this wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. This was accountability. This was truth finally clawing its way into the light. "Are you ready?" Rowan asked. She paused. A long, thoughtful silence. "Yes," she said finally. "I'm ready." Together, They visited a discreet law office on Park Avenue, one that specialized in corporate ethics violations. The attorney, a woman with steel-gray eyes and an unshakable calm, scanned the documents with growing intrigue. "You're certain you want to proceed?" she asked. Madeline nodded. "Tristan Hale has hidden enough." "Then understand this," the attorney continued. "If we submit these filings, the board will act within 24 hours, but Tristan will know who initiated it. If we don't know," Madeline met her gaze without flinching. "Good." The attorney gave a small, satisfied smile. "Then, let's begin." The paperwork took an hour. The consequences would last a lifetime. By the time they stepped back onto Park Avenue, a chill had settled into the evening air. The city lights shimmered against the Mercedes and black sedans lining the street. Rowan watched her carefully. "You okay?" he asked. Madeline hugged her coat closer. "I feel lighter and terrified, but mostly lighter." Rowan's expression softened. "You did something brave." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The whirlwind inside her had settled into something solid, resolve. The next morning, the world exploded again. Every major business outlet reported the same headline: Hale Urban Development under audit. CEO, Tristan Hale, temporarily suspended. Tristan's face flashed across millions of screens, stunned, pale, unprepared. Madeline read the headline only once. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply whispered, "It's your turn to answer for everything." Because the game had changed, and Madeline Carter was no longer playing defense. Sienna Moore had always believed she could read the rise and fall of power better than anyone. But the morning Tristan Hale's suspension went public, she walked into her sleek Lower Manhattan apartment and felt for the first time the sharp sting of genuine fear. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from journalists, messages from colleagues, panicked voicemails from clients who suddenly wanted nothing to do with the woman tangled in the biggest corporate scandal of the year. She threw her phone onto the couch and paced. "Damn it, Tristan, you said everything was under control." But everything was clearly not under control. Her building's doorman, usually polite to a fault, could barely meet her eyes when she walked in earlier. Investors, she once charmed at rooftop events, unfollowed her on social media. Even her PR agency, a team she'd practically built her brand with, sent a cold, formal email. "Due to the current reputational risk, we will be pausing all representation." Paused, which really meant abandoned. Sienna swallowed her rising panic. She tried calling Tristan again. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. By the fifth attempt, she was shaking. She grabbed her coat, stormed out, and drove straight to Hale Urban headquarters. She didn't care about optics anymore. She needed answers, protection, something. But when she marched toward the executive elevator, the security guard stepped into her path. "I'm sorry, Miss Moore. You're not permitted upstairs." Sienna blinked. "What do you mean?" Tristan asked me to. "He's not here," the guard said stiffly. "And even if he were, the board has issued restrictions. No non-staff allowed beyond the lobby." Restrictions. A sanitized word for "you're toxic now." Sienna's throat tightened with rage. "He can't just shut me out." The guard didn't budge. "Ma'am, please leave before we're forced to escort you out." Escort. Like a criminal. Humiliation burned up her neck. She spun on her heel, heels clicking sharply, fury shaking each step. As soon as she reached her car, she slammed the door and screamed into her palms. She had risked everything for Tristan, her reputation, her career, her future, and now he was cutting her loose to save himself. "No," she hissed. "He doesn't get to ruin me and walk away." She opened her phone, scrolling to the secret contact she'd messaged before, the one who'd been waiting for Tristan to stumble. Her fingers hovered for only a second. Then she typed, "He's collapsing. Tell me what you need to finish this." Sienna Moore wasn't loyal. She was a survivor. And if Tristan Hale thought she'd sink with him, he was about to learn just how dangerous a drowning woman could be. Madeline Carter hadn't walked Manhattan streets alone in months. Not without someone trailing her, not without Tristan monitoring her schedule, not without the pressure of fitting into the role he crafted for her. But as she stepped out of the taxi in front of the Plaza Hotel, the winter wind brushing her cheeks, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Sharp, clean, electrifying. She wore a simple black coat, hair pulled into a low twist, not glamorous, not flashy, but unmistakably poised. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't running. She was returning to the world on her own terms. Rowan had offered to escort her inside, but she declined. "Thank you," she told him, "but this part, I need to do alone." He understood. He always did. As she entered the lobby, the noise shifted. Conversations dipped, eyes lifted. People recognized her, not because she was once the CEO's wife, but because she had suddenly become the woman at the center of every headline. The whispers followed her like shadows. "That's her. The wife. She disappeared. She's the one who leaked the video, right? She looks stronger than I expected." Madeline didn't flinch. Every whisper used to wound her. Now each one simply reminded her she was standing. She took the elevator to the ballroom floor, the same ballroom where Tristan's image imploded 2 days earlier. Event staff still rushed around trying to salvage what remained of the conference weekend. But when she stepped out, everything slowed. Executives halted mid-conversation. 2 board members froze, stunned. And at the end of the hall, Tristan. He looked nothing like the man she'd married. No polish, no swagger. Just exhaustion carved into his posture. Their eyes met. His widened with disbelief. "Maddie?" he whispered, stepping forward as if drawn by force. You came." She nodded once. Calm. Measured. "We need to talk." Relief washed over him so visibly it almost startled her. He reached toward her. Desperate. She stepped back. Tristan froze, confusion slicing through him. "Maddie? Please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But you're here now. Does that mean?" She cut him off with a quiet steadiness he'd never heard before. "It means," she said, "that I'm not afraid of facing you anymore." A few investors drifted closer, sensing tension, sensing drama. Tristan noticed and quickly dropped his hand, terrified of losing control of the narrative again. "Let's talk somewhere private," he pleaded. But Madeline shook her head. "No. Here is fine." His throat bobbed. "Here?" "Yes," she said. "You hid your betrayal in the dark. I'll speak my truth in the light." The murmurs swelled. And Tristan Hale, once untouchable, once powerful, once worshipped, felt a cold, unfamiliar reality. Madeline Carter had stopped being part of his story. She was writing her own, and Manhattan was finally watching her rise. The small conference room off the ballroom smelled faintly of citrus polish and stale tension. Board members filled the space, stern faces, crossed arms, eyes sharp with suspicion. Tristan Hale stood at the head of the table, shoulders squared but trembling beneath the weight of collapsing authority. Madeline stood near the doorway, calm, controlled, and no one missed the symbolism. The man once towering over the city, now overshadowed by the woman he tried to break. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, we've reviewed the preliminary findings from the independent audit. There are significant discrepancies." Tristan forced a smirk. "All of which can be explained." He nodded. "Go, Habs." "Then explain this," another board member snapped, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was the evidence Rowan had uncovered. Forged medical documents, falsified clearance signatures, emails that showed exactly how Tristan hid his cardiac condition while continuing to approve multi-million-dollar projects. Every detail exposed his negligence. Tristan's face drained. "How did you?" But the chairman wasn't finished. "And the safety bypass directive on Project Athena? The leaked emails show you instructed the contractor to skip mandatory inspections." "That is taken out of context," Tristan hissed. "No," Madeline said quietly, stepping forward. The room froze as her voice threaded through the tension. "It is exactly what it looks like." Every head turned toward her. She held up the printed thread, his words, time-stamped, undeniable. "You gambled with people's safety. You forged medical clearance. And you stole designs that were never yours." A murmur rippled around the table. The truth wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a verdict. Tristan's jaw clenched. "Maddie, stop. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she said. "You built your empire on lies, and you expected me to protect them while you destroyed me." His voice broke. "I never meant." She cut him off without raising her voice. "You never meant to lose." Silence crashed over the room. The chairman exhaled. "Mr. Hale, effective immediately, You are removed as CEO pending full investigation. Your access to company systems is revoked. Tristan staggered a half step. You can't do this. We just did. Security approached. But Tristan looked only at Madeline. His voice cracked, barely audible. You did this to me. She met his gaze without blinking. No, Tristan, you did this to yourself. End quote. It was the moment the giant fell. Not from force, not from rage, but from the truth spoken by the woman he underestimated. Tristan Hale didn't just lose his company. He lost the illusion that he was untouchable. And this was only the beginning of his reckoning. The boardroom emptied slowly, leaving behind nothing but scattered papers, stale air, and the echo of Tristan Hale's downfall. Security escorted him out of the building, but before they reached the elevator, Tristan stopped and looked back at Madeline, the first time he had ever looked at her, without arrogance. Give us a minute, he muttered. Security hesitated, then stepped away. Madeline didn't move. She stood with the stillness of someone who had finally stopped bleeding. Tristan ran a trembling hand through his hair. Maddie, why? Why would you do this to me? She blinked, stunned by the question. To you? He stepped closer, voice trembling. Everything I did, everything was to protect the company. Our future. I know I hurt you, but you didn't have to destroy me. Destroy you? She repeated softly. Tristan, you destroyed yourself long before I ever touched a file. He flinched. Madeline exhaled, her tone steady, heartbreakingly calm. You lied to investors. You betrayed safety codes. You forged medical clearance. And you expected me to stay quiet while you gambled with people's lives. His voice broke. I just needed time. You had years, she said. Years to tell the truth. Years to treat me like your partner instead of your possession. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening with a panic that had nothing to do with losing his job. I didn't think you'd ever leave. You were the one part of my life I thought I could depend on. Madeline felt a sharp ache, an echo of the woman she used to be. The one who waited for him, believed in him, loved him. Dependence isn't love, she whispered. It's control. Then tell me what you want, he pleaded. Anything. I'll fix it. I'll go to counseling. I'll change. Just don't walk away from me. Her eyes softened, but not with affection, with finality. Tristan, she said gently, you're not asking for forgiveness. You're asking for permission to start over as if nothing happened. He shook his head desperately. I can be better. Dashin. Hope you for. I know you can, she said, but not with me. A long silence stretched between them. Heavy. Inevitable. Then Tristan whispered, I loved you, Maddie. She hesitated, but only for a moment. No, she said quietly, you loved the woman who kept you comfortable. His face crumpled not with anger, but with the crushing realization that there was no coming back. Not this time. Madeline stepped back, leaving him in the hallway where his empire had just collapsed. She didn't hate him. She didn't fear him. She didn't need him. She had outgrown him. And tomorrow, her life would no longer orbit Tristan Hale at all. 1 month after Tristan Hale's empire collapsed, Manhattan felt different to Madeline. Not louder, not brighter, but finally hers. Gone were the days she slipped through the city like a shadow beside a man who consumed the spotlight. Now she walked with quiet confidence, unhurried, unafraid, rebuilding her life piece by piece. Her new apartment in Brooklyn wasn't a penthouse, but it overlooked a quiet, tree-lined street and filled with sunlight every morning. The space felt warm, lived in, like the home she once dreamed of creating, not the display Tristan forced her to curate. Sketchbooks lay open on the coffee table. Samples of fabric and wood tones were spread neatly across the kitchen counter. She was designing again, this time under her own name. And clients were calling? The scandal had inadvertently shined a light on the truth. Madeline Carter was the real talent behind many of Hale Urban's most praised designs. Investors wanted to hire her. Developers wanted to collaborate. Magazines requested interviews. She politely declined. She didn't want fame. She wanted ownership of herself. One crisp morning, Rowan visited with a warm drink and a smile that didn't push, didn't expect, just offered. He had been beside her through the hardest moments, but never once tried to fill a role she wasn't ready to give. How's the little one? He asked softly, glancing at her growing belly. Healthy, she said, hand resting affectionately over her stomach, and calmer now. He nodded, relief visible. And you? Madeline hesitated, then smiled, small but real. Stronger. They walked to the window, sunlight casting a gentle glow across her living room. Rowan spoke quietly, almost hesitant. You know, you rebuilt your life in a way most people never find the courage to. Her eyes softened. I didn't rebuild alone. His cheeks flushed, but he didn't look away. For a moment, they stood in warm silence, two people connected not by crisis, but by respect. Madeline didn't rush into his arms. She didn't need a romance to validate her healing. Instead, she reached out and gently took his hand. Not as a replacement for a broken love, but as the beginning of something she chose freely. Across the city, Tristan Hale lived in the ruins of the life he tried to control. Legally disgraced, publicly exposed, alone. And for once, Madeline felt no bitterness. His downfall wasn't her victory. Her freedom was. She turned back to Rowan, voice soft but certain as a sunrise. I learned something. You don't heal by going back to what broke you. You heal by stepping into what you were always meant to become. And with that truth, her story closed. Not with revenge, but with rebirth. A woman rebuilt. A future earned. A life finally her own. So, that's where our story closes, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here with me right now, listening all the way to this moment, then something inside this journey must have touched your heart in its own quiet way. So let's pause. Just you and me, and look at what this story is really whispering to us. Life doesn't break us because we're weak. Life breaks us so we can see where we've outgrown the walls around us. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Madeline didn't heal by begging for the past to return. She healed by stepping into the woman she was always meant to become. And maybe that's a mirror for you too. If you're holding on to something that hurts, remember this. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose peace over fear. You're allowed to rebuild slowly, gently, beautifully. And if this story made you feel understood, even a little, then don't leave quietly. Give this video a like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to join this family that grows stronger with every story we tell. You're not alone, and your new chapter is waiting.